Romany and Raq by G Bramwell Evens. Give me the clear blue sky over my head and the green turf beneath my feet, a winding road before me, and then to thinking. Chapter 18. The Tired, Soiled Things. October. Each house in which I have lived has had an attic. I have a liking for these rooms near the sky. As a rule they are irregular in shape, and their sloping ceilings and windows, jutting out with shameless curiosity over the surrounding streets, recall the quaintness of country cottages and the glories of thatched roofs. One feels that just below lie the fields and the lanes which lead to the main highway. To begin with, the attic is a museum, and one comes across the things which have been stored away and almost forgotten. Over there in the corner stand my fishing rods. I handle them lovingly. The top joint with its neat splice brings back the murmur of running waters, and of the lordly fish in the duel with which I came off second best. I can once more hear the scream of the reel, feel the mighty pull on the line, see the top curling into a circle, feel my heart leap into my mouth as a crescent moon leaps high into the air. Then Ichabod, a slack line and a broken rod. By the rod stands an old cricket bat. Every scar and dent speaks of ducks and triumphs. I take it up and feel its balance, and it gives back to me the voices of the past. Well played, sir. Hard luck, old man. The shadowed part is what we call the condemned cell. It is occupied, according to the house in which we find ourselves, by various articles of furniture, antiques, disposits and relics of former tenants. That sofa in the corner, an upholstered horror in American cloth, ought to be valuable in time, as it must be the only one of its kind. There is the iron bedstead and straw mattress that may be needed, the mammoth cheese dish which never will, and the inevitable mahogany curtain poles. All these, however, may receive their reprieve when the triennial eviction takes place, unless in a moment of forgetfulness we mistake them for firewood. But as I rummage about I come across other things too. If the attic is a museum to me, it is used by my wife as the halfway house to the jumble sale. In the other corner, and well screened from casual glances, lies a covered heap of clothing. I am almost in the act of passing on to something more interesting when my eye is caught by a familiar piece of cloth. So that's where my old suit is, I murmur to myself, and pull out of its hiding place a beloved pair of baggy trousers and a coat that clings lovingly to my shoulders. Very thoughtfully I rescue it from its death sentence. Then I listen from the top of the stairs to make sure that there is no one in the bedroom, and very quietly I take my old friend and reinstate it in my wardrobe. By the way, I say casually a little later to my wife, where is my old brown suit? I haven't seen it lately, and I'm going out with Raq tomorrow. She looks at me thoughtfully, carefully, as though weighing up her words. Oh, I've put it in the attic, dear. There was so little room in the bedroom. No more is said, but I know that it was put in the attic so that I should forget its existence. If I had not asked about it in 6 months, it would have gone to the making of cloth rugs. The attic is a forgettery. Within limits, things can be produced if asked for. Then, But as I donned the old suit the next morning, there was only one thing I was sure of. It will find its way to the attic again. How good it was to be out in the fields again, and better still to be out with Raq and Ned as companions. Every now and then Ned would stand still before some lovely bit of colour. Once, before a chestnut tree which glowed with autumn gold, he took off his cap, and I heard him murmur, "Take off thy shoes, for the place wherein thou standest is holy ground, and I knew that he was thinking of the burning bush. "It's a wonderful time of year," he said. I answered nothing at first, knowing that this was but the opening aria, a preamble to the thoughts which the old man sometimes revealed. But as my companion looked at me expectantly, I ventured to say, "A beautiful but rather sad time, I always think." "Falling leaf and fading flower, goodbye to summer," I quoted. Ned gave a slight explosion of disgust. "That's where the poets have gone wrong," he said, and paused. Then he raised his arm and swept into its wide circle hills and vale. "Look around you," he cried, the lustre of the woods giving him inspiration. "Look around you. What is it that you see? Mournfulness and death? Can you see any signs of wreaths or the wearing of crape?" He stood and pointed first at the beech, then the elm, and finally our eyes rested on a Virginia creeper that nestled blood red against an old grey building. "Royal colours," he said. "Gold, purple, crimson. Nature putting on her bunting, as I've hinted at afore. This is her gala season. She's celebrating the fulfilment of the promise of the spring. The white bridal blossom is a prophecy. Today, see its realization." He stooped and picked up from the ground a horse chestnut. Conkers, I used to call them when a boy. Up the chimney they used to go to harden, and I saw myself with my string of conkers, and I was recalled by Ned saying, "That's why nature is a-showing her flags. The seeds have ripened and most of them have been sown. Her work's done. She goes to her rest like a conqueror." "But her flags are being lowered," I said. For answer my companion drew me aside, and we stepped over a mossy bank into the wood. No sound of bird or beast broke the silence. The great beeches towered upwards. Larches swayed in every little gust of wind. Oaks with gnarled bark made the aisles of nature's great cathedral. Then there came the sound of a sigh. A slight click could be heard, and the next moment a leaf, like a golden butterfly, was released from a branch. Yellow leaves from the elm, saffron ribbed with brown from the beech, oak leaves tough and tawny. For a second they glided on the wing. Now they turned and dived, and the light filtering through the top branches was caught and reflected as they swerved. Now they poised in mid-air as though selecting their landing place, and descending on the back of some unseen curve, finally rested on the soft carpet of the woods. "Lowering their flags, you call it," said Ned in a whisper. "Only vandals shout in a wood. That's only the beginning of another beautiful life." "It looks very much like the beginning of the end to me," I said, in a tone which I knew would either draw him out or send him into his shell. "As a matter of fact," I went on remorselessly, "we are witnessing the scrapping of so much rubbish. 1,000,000 energies have quivered in those quiet lying leaves. 1,000,000 engines were at work in their construction. Now they are tossed aside as so much waste, and you talk as if they were fluttering to a carnival instead of to their doom." I expected the old man would flare up at that, but instead he looked at me and smiled indulgently. "Nay," he said, "your tone belies you. You're just trying to pull me leg a bit. You can't believe that." Then, taking my arm, he continued, pointing to the leaves, "There's no such thing as waste in the universe. What we call waste is a sign of ignorance. The world is run on a big borrowing and lending principle. Mother Earth advances most of the goods. The sun steps in too and lends a helping hand." "Earth to earth and ashes to ashes," I quoted. "That's it now," said Ned appreciatively. "That body of yours is made out of common clay. Whatever there is in it that comes out of the earth, it's all been lent to you. Finally, the mortgage is called in." We were quiet for a few moments. There was a solemnity about the way he put things, even though there ran through it a lightsome touch. "And it's the same with a leaf," he continued. "Them little butterflies lying there will be caught up in the first gale which blows. They'll have the maddest gamble of their lives, o'er hill and glen, o'er moor and fen, till they sink down and rot, I said. Ned glared at me, and I hastened to change my monosyllable to hand in their borrowings. He nodded and continued, and where they give back what's been lent 'em will come up the cowslip or the harebell. The foxglove and the bee orchis, I whispered. Coloured and made strong by the dust of the past, no longer dead, but surging and swaying with new life, for nature lays by her tired, soiled things, her used-up things, and they come up fresh again in other forms. We left the wood behind us and tramped on in unbroken silence. At last I said, and the life that was in the leaf, where does that go? Resides in the tree, surely, stored up till the spring, he answered. And the life in the plant that dies with the first nip of the frost, where does that go? You've only accounted for the materials, I persisted. That's something that all your science and chemistry can't answer for certain, said Ned slowly. Only living things can take up these dead elements and transform them into something new. Maybe it sinks back into the great lender himself. Here he stood still and said quietly, shall he make atoms to persist and leave life to trickle into the void, to waste? It's unthinkable that he should look after the house and forget the more valuable tenant. Unthinkable, I echoed, as we parted. As we passed through the village, I called in to see Sally Stordy for a moment. She was busy with some sewing or other. As I entered, I heard her voice raised in argument, and I saw Billy, one of her boys, standing rather tearfully near to her. Says as how he wants a new pair of trousers and not these, said Sally to me, holding up a patched corduroy pair for me to see, and thus giving me a clue to the domestic trouble. I've never had a new pair but once, said Billy. I've always got to wear out our Jimmy's. And Jimmy, said Sally, what does he get? Does he have new uns, or do I make his father's fit him? And what do you do with yours, sir? She asked, turning to me and hoping to find help in my answer. Where do they go? The attic, I replied promptly. And where do Billy's go when he's done with them? There ain't anything to do out with when he's done with 'em, she said significantly. As far as I can make out, he leaves most of 'em on barbed wire at the tops of trees. If this out ends up as floor cloth or kindling, she said, pointing to the fire, there's no waste in this house. I left for home, and Sally went to feed her hens and pig. And so I tramped homeward with a vision in my mind of how things are used up. Clothes are passed on from father to child, and from child to smaller child. The hens knead up the fragments into eggs, and the sows churn up the swill tub into tasty rashers. There is very little waste in the country.